Hello friends, welcome back to Netcode-Hub channel. So in this video we're going to talk about how to create JSON Web Tokens, popularly known as JWT, and how to use the JSON Web Tokens in user registration and also to authenticate login as well. So in this video that is what you're going to have a look at. Okay, before we tackle the JSON Web Token, we must first understand some concepts. What are these concepts? If I want to create, if you have a registration form, if you have a lot of users, you can never store user credentials such as the username and the password in a plain text, isn't it? Because it is very dangerous when you do that. So what you do is you can encrypt, or you can change the format from a plain text to maybe characters and letters mixed together as an encrypted. So even when someone barges into your database, the person might not able to read the data as supposed to in a plain text. So in Microsoft, that is a .NET, we can actually do this by doing it in two ways. Now our project is going to be based on .NET 7. So that's the current one as I am recording this video. Now in this we have to understand two concepts. The first one is known as password hashing or password hash, and the other one is password sort. What is the definition for each, and how are you going to implement these two? I tried to surf on the internet to get you a simple explanation, and thank God I had one. Now, when you talk about password hashing, it is defined as putting the password through a hashing algorithm. So by using the bcrypt or the SHA, Shimmer hashing algorithm, and you could say up to 10 plain text into an intelligible series of numbers and letters. So this is important for base security hygiene, because in the event of security breach, any compromised passwords are unintelligible to bad actor. So as a result, the theft of this information is considerably more difficult. So as you can see, example is what has been displayed here. Now when you hash password, it turns this hello into these characters and letters. So when you get this, it becomes very difficult for you to really understand that it is hello. That is a password hashing. But you know, when you hash password, example is hello. Hello is going to be the same even when you hash it or when you encrypt it 100,000 times. The format is static, so it doesn't change often. So if this is the hello and you use hello as a password, only this hashing, if someone tries to guess hello, you can use a brute force, any other security to get the password, because the static or the standard or the format is the same. So if I encrypt hello, I'm going to have this. If you do the same thing, you're going to have the same thing as well. So it becomes very easy for people to guess it, isn't it? That is why you need to include the sort. So what is sort? You know what sort does, right? It makes food delicious. I believe you enjoy taking salt. I also enjoy it. So now when we talk about password sort or password sorting, what is it? Now password hashing is a key step to protect your users on the back end. It is not infallible because it hashes the consistent way. This means that it is predictable and can be beaten by a dictionary attacks or rainbow table attacks. So when you use the password hashing, it can be beaten because it is static. So anybody can still guess it, and it's going to give us the same format. Let's say when you use sort, it is the act of adding a series of random characters to a password before going through the hashing function. So example is what has been displayed here. You can see we have hash, that's a hello, it is giving us this. Now we are having hash hello plus, that is a sort, so it is a random number, and we have this. So even when an attacker tries to decrypt hello to get this format here, the sort here has identified this from the first one, so it cannot be guessed easily. That is the reason why we need to add password hashing and sort together. So you must apply the sort, then you hash it together, okay, then you can now store in a database as a password hash. Now when this password is being hashed or compute, now we have to, or we can now, based on the computed hash text or the format, to generate a token, and that is what can be used. So the next question is, then what is JSON Web Token? If you now actually understand password sorting and password hashing, what is token? When you go to JWT, that is the JSON Web Token.io, their site, it tells you that JSON Web Token is an open standard that defines a compact and self-contained way of securing transmitting information between parties as a JSON object. So it is a way of two parties communicating in an encrypted format. So it is not in a plain text, but rather is in an encrypted format. And that's why we talk about JSON Web Token. Now, we are also saying that the JSON Web Token can be signed using a secret, that's the HMAC algorithm, or a public or private key per using the RSA or the ECDSA. Okay, so here, when a communication is being happening between two parties, it's been encrypted. And now with the encryption, it contains some essential data that can be used for authorization or for information exchange as well. Now these are the token structure. We have header, payload, and signature. So in a typical JSON Web Token, structure may have the XXX, that is the first one, which stands for the header. It has the payload and it has the signature. Okay, now if you try to read along here, it's giving out, it is explaining the header, the payload, and the other ones as well. But for now, we can just go through some more. Example is when you talk about the payload, that is why this contains registered claims. So these claims come in such a way that the issuer, expiration date, subject, and audience. So here, the token that is coming, it has a payload. Now the payload contains a registered claims. Now that person, is that person a user, or is say an administrator, or a normal user? So you can specify that in the payload. That is what you're going to base on and give the user an access to some of your controller action methods. We have a look at this and you're going to understand this beautifully. Okay, so the next thing to do here is, now we understand this, the first thing is to create a password, hash them, apply the sort, then we can now use that password to generate the token. So let's get going. Let's create a project. I have done so already, and now make sure here is going to create API project. So if you don't know how to create projects, you launch a Visual Studio, to file, then new project, then here you're going in for, that is the ASP.NET Core Web API. So you can just search over here, ASP.NET Core Web API. We're using for C#, as you can see from here. So you choose the API, then next give it a name, and the framework that we are using here is .NET 7. So .NET 7, that's the current one that we're going to use. Okay, so I have an empty project here. So if I run this, let's run and see what we have now. So you can see that as soon as I run my project, I have this Swagger UI, and that is what you're going to use to test our JSON Web Token, password hashing, and the sorting as well. Okay, so currently we have nothing here, and these are the default ones that has been issued in the application as soon as you create a new project in .NET 7. So we have this. Now the next thing to do here is we have to create a model. Now this model, we want to create first a DTO. Now when we talk about DTO, what does it mean? DTO stands for data transfer object. Now data transfer object, it is a model that does not get into the database, but it rather gets the data from another model and transfer it to another one as well. So it acts as a mediator. It gets data and transport it to the other one and deliver it as well. Okay, so that's what we call as a DTO. Now we need to create a DTO for user, and we need to create a user model as well. So let's get going and create these two models. So right click on our solution, our project. Now let's add, so first we're going to add the user. So that is the user here. So that is a class. Now with the user class, as we have added, we are going to create username, a password hash, and password source. So type in prop, now int, and here we want it to be string because we need username. So let's cut this and we paste it here, username. And now for initialization sake, let's set this to string.empty. Okay, so let's set another one. So prop, prop, hit on the tab key twice. And now here we want to use byte. So you need a byte array here. So byte. Then this, let's give this name as password hash. So password hash. The reason why we are storing it in a byte, like it is too long and it is a format. So it's appropriate when you use byte rather not string. Okay. So we use password hash. Now we can actually copy the same thing and we can paste it once more, and now we create it as password source. So we are going to add these two together to create a solid password. We're going to have the hash generated, then we're going to add the sort to the hash to make a strong or good password. Alright, now you are done with this. Let's go in there and create our user, that is a DTO. Okay, so user DTO. Now the user DTO, it is going to be used to transfer the user data. So username and user password. So let's go in there and create that as well. Add another class, and now the name of this class here is going to be user DTO. That is the user data transfer object. Now with the user DTO, we're going to pass in username and password. Okay, so you can just go in there, copy this one here, and now we paste this. We can paste this once more, and now instead of username, this is going to be password. We initialize them to empty for the initial stage. Okay, so let's save this. Now after doing this, our next thing to do here is very simple. We need to add a controller in which we can create the password sort, and we can also encrypt the password as well. So let's go to Solution Explorer. Now on our controller, right click, and now let's add a new controller. So controller, and now the name of this controller here is supposed to be an API. So select API, empty one, click on add, and now we want to add auth. So let's add auth, that's authentication. So auth controller as indicated here. So we have auth controller, let's add that as well. Okay, so we have auth controller and .cs. So let's click on add, and now we have our controller added here. Okay, so what you have here, the next thing to do is we need to create a constructor. And now to create a constructor, click on this control plus dot. Now you see we have generate constructor right here. So generate that. Now we want to pass in configuration because you want to get data from the app settings.js. Now there's a file in our Solution Explorer known as the app settings.json. Now with this JSON file, that's what we're going to keep our key. So we need to set up or create a variable that's going to hold our key over there. And when you create it there, we have to able to access it over here. So that's what we need to use the configuration. Okay, so let's use it here before we go in there and set it up. So we need to use configuration. So configuration. Then we can give it an object name as configuration. Now in order to set this, hit on the control plus period, that is a dot. Now click on create and assign fields. So you can see it has created a field over here, it has assigned it over here as configuration. So we are good to go. Now let's generate, since we are not getting the data from the database, okay, let's create an object out of the user class, so we can actually send, or you can actually transmit the user credential. So let's use prop. Then here you want to use static, and I'm going to call it user, and here the object name is user. So user. Okay, now equal to, so this is equal to new, then user. So we can just get rid of this. So we have created a new object out of this user, so we can actually populate the data in between this user. And you can see that defaultly it is what? String. It is empty. So default is empty. Now we need to create our controller. That's an action method. So we go in for the first one here. Let's make it as post, because you're going to what? Post it. So HTTP post. We're going to register. And now with this, you're going to give it route ID as what? Register. So when it gets to this HTTP verb, it's going to search for the register action method. So let's create that register action method. And now we need to use async, because it's going to be a task, then task, and we use an action result. So action result. Then with this action result, we need to pass in the user. Okay, so we need to pass in the, because it's going to return a user. And now with this, we can call in register. So that is the name as we specify in the route. So here we need to use user DTO, and we need to use, let's give it a name as what? Request. So you know this user contains that is a username and a password hash and a sort. Check here, username, password hash, and a sort. So as soon as you define it over here, it means it's going to return username, password hash, and what? And a sort. Okay, and now we are passing in user DTO. This DTO contains username and only password. So you pass in the password and username, and then the output here is going to be username, password sort, and password hash as specified in this user model. I believe this is clear. Now let's move on. So let's open a parenthesis. Now hereby we need to specify some few codes here to make this work as soon as the user tries to register. So we need to call a method. Now this method, we're going to create this method, but let's call it over here. So create, let's make it as create password hash. So that's the name of the method. And now with this method, we're going to specify some parameters in. The first one we need to use is the request dot. We need to use user password. So request dot password, and that's what you need to use, because that's what you're going to encrypt or hash it. Now aside from that, we need to use an out keyword. Now this out keyword here, it is not a parameter that's going to hold that's a value for a process. No, it's going to wait for a process to be done, then return the output. That's why we say it is out. And it is a byte array. So byte array, and the name here is password. Let's use password hash. And the same thing, you can see we have out again. So byte array, and now the name is password sort. So these ones currently did not carry anything, and they are not going to be used in the process, but rather they're going to wait after the whole process is done. Since it is out, they're going to be assigned to an output of this method. I believe this is clear. Okay, so let's terminate this. Now we haven't created this method yet, but let's go in there. Now after doing this, we can now set user.username. So let's set them to the request that is coming in dot username. Now aside from that, we can set user.password hash is equal to this password hash. That is the out keyword here. We are assigning the results to this. So the method here, the result that's going to bring it here, we're going to assign them to this model, this user model, its password, username, password, and the password hash and the password sort. So user dot password sort. So password sort is equal to, so password, not hash, so password sort. Okay, so now we need to create this method. So let's go down here and create that private method. So in order to create that private method, the signature here is what? Private void. Then let's copy this. So let's copy this and paste it here. But before that, we see this is an action method, so we need to return. So let's return this user, because you can see that here that's a return object. So let's return. So okay, the HTTP status of code for 200, and I return the user here. So return user to get rid of this red line. Now we have private void create password hash, that is this method. Let's specify the parameters in. So the first one here, you can see we have a request dot password, and you're going to set a string password to hold the value for that. Now this is out, the same thing. So let's go in there and copy. These are also out keyword as well, because they are out here and they're supposed to be out here as well, because they don't have any value to be used in this method, but rather they are there to be assigned a value to. So we have the password hash, we have the password sort over there, and now let's open a parenthesis. Now if you open parenthesis here, you can see this one is gone because it has been solved, it has been defined over here. Now what is what we're going to use? We're going to use a using block. Why do you have to use a using block? Now use a using block, as soon as the last statement gets executed, it closes the whole thing. Okay, so it's like when you want to create a connection, you use a using block. When a connection is being opened, when the last statement is being executed, the connection closes. So you need not to close it explicitly, what? Close it. Using block is going to do that work for you. So let's use that using. Then you're going to set var hmark. So that's an encryption algorithm. It's equal to new, then hm. So that's what 512. That's a 512. So there's an cryptography, and that's the encryption algorithm that we're going to use. So here we're going to create a new encryption. So that's what we are going to use as new encryption, and that's going to be for our password sort. You know, password sort is going to hold a random number. Now this encryption is also going to give us a random number. So we can associate this, or we can assign the value of this to what? To the password sort. Then we can compute the password hash to get the encrypted text. Then we fuse these two things together. Then we can actually use it to generate our token. This is very simple and it's very clear as well. So let's move on. Let's open parentheses. And now this is what we're going to say. So password, we set the password sort equal to this mac hmark dot key. So when it gets encrypted, we want to assign the key to the password sort. Now let's also find the value for the password hash. So for password hash, this is what we're going to do. We're going to call hmark the save object dot compute hash. So that's where we're going to compute. We're going to convert. And how do you compute it? By using system. So system dot test dot encoding. So dot encoding. So we need to use encoding. Let's try encoding and see. Dot encoding dot UTF-8. Okay. Dot get byte. So we need to get byte. And now with this getting byte, we're going to get the byte for password. So this password. So the password that's going to is going to pass in. We're going to compute it. We're going to convert it. Okay, into this hmark SHA512 algorithm. Then we get the value. So we have the password sort as a key for the new generated one. Then we are able to compute the hash too. So we have a password hash. So we have these two components. So now we are good to go, right? Now what you have here, let's try to run this application and see. Let's try to create an account Now let's see if we're going to have our password hash, and we're going to have our password that is our password sort as well. So let's find this application. Alright, so our page is now loaded. Now you can see from here we have our post, that's a register. So if I click on to register, let's click on try it out. You can see we have to pass in username and what password, because we can actually check here, we pass in the user DTO, and the user DTO, when you go to the definition, it contains username and password, and that is exactly what we are seeing here. Now let's click on try this out. So let's use the same things. Username is equal to string, password is equal to string. Now let's execute it. Now let's see if you're going to get our password hash. Wow, voila. So we have it over here. So you can see our password hash is still the same. So let's copy this. As I was saying, the hash key is going to be the same. So this is for string, right? Now you have a hash here. Now this is our sort. So let's copy this. Then let's open Notepad. You want to compare one thing and see. So let's open Notepad. Now with this, we're going to paste this here. So we have this. Let's increase. Okay, so we are much more focused on the password hash, and here we're using a string. Okay, so let's cancel this. Now let's go do it again. So get this again. Now try this out. We're using the same string here, okay, and the same password. Now let's see. So execute it, and now let's see. So you can see here it has 2 equal sign at the end, and you can see it has ZTFWX. Now let's see, it has what, 2 equal sign at the end. So you can see we have 2 equal sign at the end over here, right? Okay, so and let's see what else again that we can actually talk about in terms of getting the password hash here. So let's see from this, do you have any similarities here? So when you check the password sort, let's see, because the password sort is actually quite different, isn't it? Now let's try this again. So execute this, and now let's see. So it has the same 2 equal sign at the end as well. Okay, so now if we actually check here, you could see our sort here keeps what, changing completely. And if you check our the password hash as well, it also keeps what, changing. So this means that we can actually now fuse these two together to get a concrete or a tough password that we can actually use. Now once you have this, we need to actually add a registration, so a login. Now you can see we are able to register by providing username and password, and now we have a password hash and we have the sort. Now how do we log in? So before we log in, we must verify, right? So let's go in there and create that is a login method. So let's minimize this. So we have, so okay, so we have this here. Now let's expand this. Now in order to log in, you must also create another action method to log the user in. Okay, so to do that, we have to specify the HTTP web type as the same post. And now here, what do you think is going to be the name? Login. So that's the action method name. So we need to specify that as well as public. Now it's going to be a tag, so we need an async. Then specify the tags, and here what do you think is action result, and we are passing in, we want to get a string. The reason why we need to get a string here is we're going to generate a token as soon as the user data match with what you have in our application, okay, let's say in our database. So we need not to return a user again, we want to return a string that's going to be for to generate the token. So once you have this, we need to specify the login as is specified in the route. Now here we are going to also use the user DTO as well, and we give it a name as what, request. Now aside from that, let's open it. Here is just making a search. You can skip this, so let's skip this search or these validations, and now let's see. So this is what we're going to do. We check if it is not, so it means it's going to return either a boolean true or false. So let's say verify password hash. So verify password hash. If then we pass in the parameter that is a request dot password. So as soon as we create a new password, our hash and our sort has been stored. So we have it over there. Okay, we have a username as well because we created an object here. So as soon as you create, it's being stored over here temporary for us. So we are going to assign them in here. So that's a request.password, and now we will need to use user.password hash. So password hash, and we need to also use user.password sort as well. So password sort. Okay, so it means that the one that the user is passing in, we pick the password from what the user is going to type. Then we are picking the password hash and the password sort from what has been stored already. So in order to skip this, maybe you can actually make check. So let's see if username. So if user.username is not equal to request, so the one that we have stored, if it is not equal to what the user is typing in currently, then we want to say return, let's say bad request. So let's use bad request, and we can pass in user not found here. Okay, else then we move on to this one. So if the user is found, then we move on to this method. We pass in the password hash and the password sort as we have stored it over here in the user object that we created. Now we use the password that user is bringing in currently over here. Now aside from this, when we have this, we can return. So if it is not true, so we want to, let's open parenthesis, and now let's return the same bad request, and now this time around we're going to specify wrong password. So let's specify wrong password here. But in case it is true, then this is what you want to do. You want to store this as token. Okay, so string token is equal to, then let's call this method, so create token. So if everything is alright, then we need to now create token for this user. Now this user contains the password, the data, that is a password, a hash, and the sort, and the username as well. So we want to create a token using this. So create token, not create JSON Web Token. So create token. Now this is going to be the method name. Then let's return okay, and now with this okay, we can return now the token as well. This is very simple. So the return isn't right spelled, so return okay, so it is good. Now you can see we have a method here that we need to create. So we have two methods, that's a verify password hash and also create token. So let's create the verify password hash, this method. Now this method is going to return true or false because here we are checking if it is not. So we're going to return true or false. So let's start private. It's supposed to be a private, and here since it's going to be true or false, we have to use bool. Okay, then we pass in the method name, and now you can see the method has some parameters that we need to use, and here we're going to use a string for the password. Then we're going to use byte. We're going to use byte array, and that's going to be for password hash. Then the same byte array for password sorts. Okay, so the one that is coming here, we are converting them to byte array for password hash and the password source. Remember this, they are coming here as string, as that is the same as byte. Okay, so we need to actually hold them with the same data type as well. Let's open this. Now remember that this method is going to return a bool. That's a boolean, true or false. Okay, so here we need to also make a conversion. We need to convert it, or we need to encrypt it as well, to encrypt the current data, that's the current password, and check if it corresponds to the password hash or the password that has been encrypted already by adding the sort as well. So here we are still going to use the using block, and you know what the using block going to do. So var HMAC is equal to new So HMA, SHA, we're going to use the 512 version. HMAC, SHA, then we need the 512 version. Now with this 512, instead of here creating a new encryption or random key, we are now going to pass in the password sort because we have it already. So let's pass in the password sort here. So we're not going to get a new one, but rather the old one, you're going to just convert it back to the normal state and see. Now once you have this, let's create a variable and name it as computed hash. So you're going to get a computed hash to is equal to HMAC dot then compute hash. Okay, so we need compute hash. Now this compute hash, we must pass in the specific test as well, the specific object. So system.test, so dot encoding, so dot encoding dot, so we need to use dot UTF-8, then dot get bytes. So let's get bytes here. Now with the get bytes, you know what you're passing in, the same password that is coming in. Now when we get this password, let's see, it's just supposed to be equal to, let's correct it. Okay, so we have this, and the next thing to do here is we need to return, let's return computed, return computed, so computed hash dot, so here you're going to use sequence equal. So this is going to compare the password hash. So you pass in the password hash. Okay, so we have a computer test. That is the current password that user passed in. If it encrypts it, we want to compare with that password hash that has been stored already. So we compare if they are the same, then we can now generate the token here. So if it's the same, we generate the token, but if they are not the same, then we tell the user wrong password. Okay, so now let's see. Now we have the token. So if they are the same, then we need to generate the token. Now how do you generate the token? So you see that we have a user object here. So we need to create this method. So let's copy this, and now let's create this as well over here. And now it's also going to be a private. Since this token is a string, you're going to return a string. Let's paste create token, and now we need to use the user object, and that's going to be for user. Then we open parentheses because you know that this is holding a user object here. So we hold that object in this place here. And now in order to do this, we have to create a list of claims. So a list of claims, let's do it well. So a list of claims, then we can now give it a name as claims equal to new list of claims. Then we can now expand or open this. Let's close it before we forget. Now this is a new claim. So with this new claim, we're going to specify claim types. So there are a lot of claims, but this claim types is going to be name. And now where can we get this name? That is a user dot username. So we want to pass in the username, so user dot username. So that's going to be the first claim. You can actually add multiple, but for now let's maintain this one. Now once you're done with this, we have to now create a key where we can now use it for our token. So var, let's say our key is equal to new. Now we need to use symmetrical or symmetric algorithm. This security, no, we have to use this first, symmetric security. So we need to use, let's search for that first. So symmetric security key. Okay, so this, you use this first. Then we need to pass in the system dot test dot encoding. Okay, so dot UTF-8 dot get byte. So here we are going to pass in the password of the user because you want to add it. So with the get byte, instead of passing in the password, no, we don't want to do that. We want to get this from the app settings. So here you're not going to pass in the byte because you've done this already, and now you're going to pass in configuration. So remember that you've created a configuration object on top as a header. So configuration dot, now we need to use get session. Now with this get session, we have to, let's name it as this. So app settings. So app settings, then let's give it a name as token. Okay, so let's give it a name as token. You can now change this, but we are using this. Then let's use dot value. So check how it's been done, and now we can now go in and now close this. So because we have configuration dot get session app settings dot token. Now let's go in there and create this first. So let's go to Solution Explorer, app settings. Now on top here, let's create that over here. So we need to use, let's use app settings. So app settings, then we open it over here, and now when you open it, you know that the name here is going to be a token. So the next step to do here for getting or generating the app settings here is quite simple. We need to specify the name as token. Then here we need to use any text at all. By this text supposed to be at least 16 characters. So we are using my top secret, okay, key. Now when you count this, there are more than 16. So let's count 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12 13 14 15 16 17. That is all right. Now let's bring a comma here, and we are done. So that's going to store our token, and this is the initial text that you are passing in. Okay, so we have, it's almost about 16 characters, and we have specified that. So that's what you are getting the session over here. As you can see, app settings and token. That is the object. You can see, and that's the key here that we are using. And I want to get this value. So the value is what you're going to see in here. That's the value. Okay, so I think you're good to go. Now, once you have this done, the next thing to do here is we need to specify credentials. So how do you specify this credential? So let's create var create. So this time for credentials is equal to, then let's use new signing in. So new signing in credentials over here. So we can use this credentials. Then we can pass in the key that we've gotten from the app settings. Then let's use security algorithm. So security algorithm dot HMAC, that is a signature. So we use, no, we're supposed to use the 512, not there. So we're supposed to use 512, not 256. So let's see what we have actually here. HMAC, so SHA, and we're supposed to use the 512 signature that is over here. Okay, and we close this. Now the last thing to do here is we have to now specify the claims, the expire date, and the credentials. Then we are done in a JSON Web Token security token. So let's say var token is equal to new. Now we need to use JW, and that is the JWT security token. Okay, now we need to specify this. So we specify this over here. Now let's close this. Now in this specification, let's move this over here. So var token is got to new JWT security token. Then we specify this as claims. So first claims, we're going to specify it as what? Claims over here. So remember that we did this. We have this, and when creating the list of claims here. So this is the claim that we are using. Now, aside from having this claim, let's see what we have now. So change claims to, supposed to be claims. All right. So now let's see. Let's finish that. Now the next one is supposed to be expired. So with the expired, is going to based on, we're going to use date time. So date time dot Now, so dot add days. So with the add days, let's specify maybe a day. So our token is going to expire in a day. So when a day ends, our token is off. Now we have to, let's add the sign-in credentials. And now the sign-in credentials here, we specify it as creds. So creds, and that is it. So once we have this, once we've created this token, let's use that token here. So var JWT, that stands for JSON Web Token, is equal to new. So let's use JWT. Let's use the handler. So token handler. Then we want to write it. So write token, because you want to actually see the token. So write token. Okay. Then the last part here is, you can see that we need to return, because this is a return key. We're supposed to return a string. So let's return the JWT, and that's going to be a string for this. All right, that is it. So for this video, we are going to run this, and if you couldn't get it, wait and go over it again and try to get the same thing. Now there are some few things that you need to actually install. There are some packages. If you are not having, for example, this is a symmetric security key, you have to install this. So check, you have to install Microsoft.identitymodel.tokens. You need to install system.identitymodel.tokens.jwt. So, and maybe system.security.claims. So you need to install these three components, or these three packages, or these two packages, and they are good to go. So try to install that. If you don't know how to install, go to Solution Explorer, right click on dependencies, and now click on add or manage NuGet packages, and I'll type in this text to install them one after the other. Alright, so now you are done. Let's save this. Let's stop our application. Now I want us to build our project first. So right click, and now let's build it. So we wait for it to be built. Now aside from that, we run application to see. So we're going to create a JSON Web Token. We're going to create account, and that's going to hash it. After hashing it, you're going to just create login and going to create a token for us. Now let's run application and see the output. So we create, we register, then we log in. So the text that you use to log in, aside from that, we go to the JWT.io site, then we copy our token and I'll paste it there and decode it and see what we have now. So register, and now you want to change, so try it out. Let's change this text. So this is going to be, username is going to be netcode, and my password here is going to be netcode at 123. That's going to be my password. Okay, so let's click on execute. Now it is done. So you can see we have username netcode, and our password is for netcode 123. Now when you go to here, you can see we have our password sort and the hash over here. So that is the hash, and that is the sort. Now let's go in there and log in with the same data. So click on login, and now here let's try this out. So here the username here is going to be what? Netcode, and now the password is going to be netcode at 123. Let's execute this and see what we have now. So you can see we have string empty. Now let's execute and see whether we're going to have a token being generated. So we wait while it's being processed. Now okay, so good, we have our token here. So this is our token that we have. So this comprises of the password hash and the password sort. So let's copy this token. Now let's go in there and decrypt it and see whether you're going to have a netcode in the token. Okay, so let's go to the site here where we can actually get a JSON. So JSON JWT.io. Now let's copy this and paste and see. So we see as soon as we paste it, we have the name, the claims. So the name here is known as what? Netcode. Now the expiry date is, as you can see, Saturday, January 21, and that is the time. And now when today is Friday, so it means tomorrow for 1 day is going to be expired. Now you can see from claims we have the name over here. So here is the identity type. Now we specify only the name. Now we can actually specify the row as well, and we're going to talk about that one too in the next video. So I believe this is clear. So you know how to create that is a JWT, how to create a password hashing and sorting and how to generate a token and implement that in your application. That is it for this video. Thank you guys for watching. Hopefully I'm going to catch you up the next video once you move on to implement more logics in this JSON Web Tokens.